Coach, we were talking before about some of the gaps that you've had in this season where you waited a week to play. Well, nothing like that this past week. You had 6 games in 4 days, 3 doubleheaders starting Thursday and then ending on Sunday, yesterday as we tape. How did your team do in having that many games in that short of a period?
They responded really well, and again, it's been with the COVID year just interesting with how the schedule has changed slightly. Where we're used to kind of 6-game weeks where you always have a midweek game and then weekend doubleheaders, and you get done with a weekend and you got a quick turnaround. Well, all of a sudden you've got a Tuesday game, and we just haven't had that, and so suddenly to do it and have it all on the road against really quality opponents and high-level pitching. We went into that 6-game stretch, and I said, well, we'll learn a lot about who we are, and to go 5-1 in that stretch and have some really good come from behind wins and get some really great pitching performances and clutch hitting performances. I really thought that the kids handled it well. We had not only go on the road, but then we had to change some things up at Duluth where we ended up playing early, had a really quick turnaround from St. Cloud to Duluth. We started playing at 10, and that means we were on the bus and out the door at 8 o'clock and played on their football fields. We had to adjust to playing on turf, and I thought the kids responded to all of it very well.
I've always wondered, whether you're playing in the Rochester Dome or you're playing on a football field, just the lines and the striping and the different things on the field, how difficult is that for the players to adapt from playing where you play at home, a dedicated softball field, to a multi-purpose thing where maybe you can't quite see where the lines are and where things are?
I think earlier in the year, it's easier because when we play indoors and in domes in February, it's still different. But I think it's easier because we haven't done anything on a field yet. I think yesterday at Duluth, it was a little bit more challenging because we've been on softball fields now since March, and all of a sudden to go back on a football field is very different. The one thing Duluth does really well, because it's basically their home field setup, is it is on a football field and it is all football lines, but they enclose it completely with fencing. There's windscreen all the way around, so it still feels like an enclosed softball field. The only difference is dealing with all the lines. So that helps, where a lot of times you're on a football field, it's kind of just wide open. And there's maybe the home run fence, and that's about it. But here you had batter's boxes, you had the pitcher circle, you had fencing all the way around and closing it. But I think that helps. I think the biggest challenge to it is kind of where your outfield lines up, because you don't have the dirt to feel off of. I'm this far off the dirt, and this, so you're more using the fence behind you to line you up instead of the dirt in front of you. And then as coaches, even what does it look like? Like, God, it feels like our outfielders are 1,000 miles away, and there's just so much green that it feels like they're so deep all the time. So it is different. It is a challenge, but again, the kids, I think, are more resilient than we ever want to give them credit for as coaches. We're panicked about everything, and they just kind of respond to it in kind.
Okay, very good. We'll get to the Minnesota-Duluth doubleheader in just a moment, but I want to go back to Thursday and Concordia-St. Paul. Let's talk about those doubleheaders. Jordan Clement, again, had a really good pitching performance, as did Liz Potts. And then you got your timely hitting. Tell us a little bit about the series against Concordia-St. Paul.
Yeah, I really thought Joe threw the ball extremely well that day, and we hit 2 solo home runs, and Katie led off with a home run to start the game, and then we hit one to start the second inning, and so I thought that was going to really open up our offense. I thought, okay, we're going to really get rolling here. Well, in the end, that was the totality of our offense. We hit 2 solo home runs, and we didn't do a lot other than that offensively in that first game. But that kid really threw the ball well. We struck out 12 times. I think we only had like 4 hits. Other than when we played Mankato and struck out 13 times, those games were incredibly similar. And I said the only way we were going to beat Mankato was to shut them out that day when it was all said and done. When we look back at the game, because of what we didn't do offensively, the only avenue to win that game was to have won it 1-0. Well, that's exactly then what we did against Concordia against another really good pitcher was we beat them 2-0. And that's really how well Joe threw the ball. I think it might have been her best game and had her best stuff. And then in game 2, we got a little bit more offense. We scored early again, put up some crooked numbers in the first couple innings, and then Liz kind of took over from there. And Libby had a big day for us. She hit 3 balls out of the ballpark. And anytime you get 3 home runs out of a kid, you need to win games. And we were able to do that.
Yeah, let's talk about her a little bit because she's close to the league lead in RBI this season. Just talk about the performance that you've gotten from her this year.
I think the most unheralded part of Libby's game is her defense. I think she's an absolute shutdown defender at third base. She's a Gold Glover over there. And she came in. We knew how good she was defensively, but she ended up playing second base for us last year in the COVID-shortened season, and we moved her back to her natural position this year at third base. She's been so good and so steady over there that not only does she drive in runs and she leads us in home runs and RBIs, but she takes a lot of runs off the board too for team. And her defensive RBIs, if there were such a category that we could have, would be every bit as important as her offensive ones. But when Libby connects, the ball goes a long way. She is big country strong, and she hit one off that, at home there a couple weeks ago that went, bounced off the 275 mark in center field on the slow pitch fence. And she hit 3 the other day at Concordia, and her last one was every bit as majestic into the trees. So when she connects, they go a long way. She's powerful, she's confident, and she's a big-time offensive contributor for us.
Yeah, 10 home runs this season, which is the 23rd time in Warrior history that a player has hit 10 or more home runs in a season, tied for 19th, the most single season at Winona State. So halfway there to Jenny Nelson's record, but I don't know if that's even possible. 20 home runs, that's a lot of home runs to hit in a season.
It is. And Nellie had a full season to do it. And instead of only 44 games, Libby's the kind of kid, I don't want to say that Libby is a streaky hitter by any stretch, but her power can be streaky when she really gets rolling. And because every time she barrels one up, it has a chance to leave the ballpark. And I think Libby will end up having a chance to break that record in a regular season. I don't know that it can happen this year yet.
Okay. And then you move on then to St. Cloud State. Talk a little bit about that series and what you saw in your team there.
Those were great mental toughness wins for us. That was a grind. That's the kind of game you leave and you just sit on the bus and your head's throbbing and you're like, I don't know how we just did that. We knew going in, they're top 5, top 10 in the country in total offense. They have 5 kids hitting over 400, and we knew we were going to need big-time pitching performances. And, it was one of those things that I felt like, okay, we're going to give up 4 or 5 runs because they're just that good. The question became, can we outscore those runs because they also have good pitching? Is what makes them a good team. And our formula is pretty simple. Get to 4 and we win. And I don't know what it is at this point right now this year because I don't go back and tabulate it until it's all said and done. But over the course of time, if we score 4 runs, we win. The challenge with some of the pitching in this league is getting to 4. And so you feel like, okay, the formula needs to change a little bit. It's not about getting to 4. It's about being able to come from behind, it's being able to win 1-run games. And we were able to do that. And I thought our offensive output in game 1 was huge because Tegan got that big 3-run homer for us late in the game and turned that game around after they had a 4-1 lead against us. And that 3-run homer tied it up. And then in game 2, Liz had the best outing she's had all year. She really threw the ball well and held them down. And both Joe and Liz pitched well to pitch under duress in the last inning with a 1-run lead and come out with the victory. And both of them, I was really happy with how we pitched that day.
All right. And then also maybe unheralded because I didn't really see any mention of it, but Katie Kolb did break the record for most games played in a career at Winona State. She now has 231. The record was 229 for Lainey Van Zyl. But I mean, it just speaks to her durability and what she's been able to do for the past 5 years that she's been at Winona State.
Yeah, and we can continue to talk about her consistency. And this is her best year offensively that she's ever had for us. And she just continues to get big hits and lead off games and draw tough walks. I don't want to sit and complain about umpiring, but I always feel like the outside corner for her gets expanded because of how tight she stands on the plate, and it seems to shift. Yet she still draws walks. I mean, she's on base 50% of the time for us, and she gets big walks and big situations. But then this year she's been able to add to that by, getting the ball out of the ballpark 4 times for us with big home runs. He leads off with doubles and base hits and ignites our offense that way. Makes big plays for us on defense. She's just such a steady leader for us. It's be a long time before somebody breaks that game's played record, I think.
All right, and that leads us then to Minnesota Duluth. Katie Kolb had a home run in Game 1 of that series. We have about 3 minutes left in this segment. You won one and you lost one against Minnesota Duluth. Talk about that series.
I think I said after the game yesterday, we had no business winning Game 1 and they had no business winning Game 2, yet it was flipped. So, we're down 2-1 going into the 7th, and we opened that thing up for 7 runs in the top of the 7th inning. I don't think any of us saw that coming, and we just Riley had a big leadoff home run to tie it at 2, and then we just never stopped hitting and end up putting up 7 runs and win it going away. In Game 2, we had all sorts of offense. We couldn't score. We had 10 hits. We left a whole bunch of people on base. We walked. We had good at-bats. We had a good process. We just never got the big hit. We never got the and the difference is in this winning streak, we'd won 11 games in a row, and seemingly in every game we'd hit a home run. And with that home run, no different than we talked about Tegan's home run against St. Cloud State, it came with 2 on and it tied the game. Riley's home run in Game 1 tied the game. And we just needed a ball to leave the ballpark in Game 2, and we would have probably won that game. The other side of that is we need to figure out how to win games without the home run. We've got to get a base hit here with 2 outs, or we've got to get a 2-out rally here or there and things like that. But I told the kids after the game, don't measure yourself by that loss. We won 11 in a row. We're playing good softball. We did everything right. It's just regroup and let's go get the next one. But it was, the Duluth game our Duluth games, I thought were great resilience on our kids to bounce back after a short turnaround and win a big game. And we needed to split with them to stay ahead of them in the standings, and we were able to do that. And it lines us up now to see what we can do on the track.
Yeah, you're tied for second in the NSIC with Minnesota State, and Augustana is number 1. Just before we end here, though, you brought up Riley Stout. Her dad gave you some national attention by going viral on a TikTok video where he visited all 3 of his daughters during a weekend. Tell us a little bit about that and what the team thinks about him going viral.
It's been outstanding. There's been a lot of buzz about it on the team and on the bus, and the Stouts are just great people, and all of our parents, travel so well, and that's just another example of the good people we have surrounding our program. And I said the greatest part about the video, being an 80s kid, it looked like an 80s sitcom introduction, and I thought it was so well done, and they've done a good job supporting their whole family like so many of our parents have, and any kind of national attention to the positive is great. It's been great for Winona State University. It's been great for the athletic department. It's been great for the softball team. It's been great for the Scout family.